I'm Stephanie Mitchell, 37, and 10 years ago I built a tech company from nothing but an idea and determination. Tonight was supposed to be the crowning achievement, our IPO celebration gala. Instead, I watched frozen in shock as my husband Thomas took the stage, introduced a woman named Audrey Bennett as co-founder and new CEO, and with a smile that never reached his eyes, whispered to me, "Don't make this more embarrassing than it already is." My life's work was being stolen right before my eyes, in front of everyone who mattered. If you're watching this and have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, I'd love to hear where you're watching from. Hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and stick around because what happened next changed everything about how I view success, trust, and what it really means to build something that lasts. I didn't start out planning to build a tech empire. With my MBA from Stanford and 5 years in the industry, I was on a traditional career path at Horizon Tech, one of the bigger players in Silicon Valley. That's where I met Thomas Walker. He was 40 then, a marketing executive with an impressive network and the kind of confidence that filled a room. Everyone wanted to be around Thomas, including me. Our romance moved quickly. We connected over late-night conversations about disrupting the tech landscape, challenging established players, and building something meaningful. Thomas had vision and connections while I had technical know-how and an innovative approach to customer relationship management software. The current CRM systems are dinosaurs, I explained to Thomas during one of our early dates, sketching on a napkin at an upscale San Francisco restaurant. They're built on outdated architecture that can't adapt to how businesses actually use customer data today. Thomas leaned forward, genuinely interested. So what's your solution? A cloud-native system with real-time synchronization and predictive analytics that actually works, I said. Something that doesn't just store data, but helps companies understand customer behavior patterns before they become obvious. 6 months later we were married, and 3 months after that, we launched CloudLink from our garage. I cashed out my 401k, and Thomas leveraged his credit to secure equipment. Our dining table became our conference room, and sleep became a luxury we could rarely afford. Those early days were both terrifying and exhilarating. I'd code until my fingers cramped, fueled by instant ramen and cheap coffee. Thomas worked his network, arranging meetings with potential clients and investors. We were a team. I built the product, he sold the vision. We have exactly $18 in our checking account, Thomas announced one evening, 6 months into our venture. I looked up from my keyboard, bleary-eyed. The AWS bill is due tomorrow. Then we better win that startup competition tomorrow. Shouldn't we? He grinned, that confident smile that made me believe everything would work out. And somehow it did. We won the Bay Area Tech Innovator Competition the next day, $25,000, and, more importantly, visibility. A small venture capital firm took notice, and Derek Harris became our first investor, putting in $150,000 for a 10% stake. Your technical architecture is impressive, Derek told me after reviewing our prototype. But it's Thomas's vision for market penetration that sealed the deal. With that first infusion of capital, we moved operations from our garage to a tiny office space in a less desirable part of San Francisco. We hired our first 2 employees, Zach, a brilliant coder who worked for equity and minimal salary, and Jamie, a customer success specialist who believed in our vision enough to leave a stable job. Welcome to the CloudLink family, I told them on their first day, standing in our office that barely fit 4 desks. We don't have fancy perks or catered lunches, but we're building something that's going to change how businesses connect with their customers. Our early company culture was defined by that scrappy, all-hands-on-deck mentality. We celebrated small wins with cheap champagne, worked weekends without complaint, and genuinely believed we were creating something revolutionary. Thomas and I were perfectly in sync. He understood the market landscape while I focused on product innovation. You know what makes us different from other startups? Thomas said during one late night at the office. Most technical founders don't understand business, and most business people don't understand technology. But together we bridged that gap perfectly. I believed him completely. In those early days, our partnership seemed unbreakable. A perfect combination of complementary skills and shared vision. CloudLink wasn't just a company. It was our creation, our shared dream made real. Little did I know that the foundation of trust one thought we were building would eventually crumble beneath my feet, taking with it not just my marriage but the company I poured my soul into creating. 3 years after founding CloudLink, we secured series of funding, $3 million, that transformed our operation overnight. We moved to proper offices in South of Market, expanded our team to 15 employees, and finally started paying ourselves reasonable salaries. Our product was gaining traction, particularly with mid-sized businesses that appreciated our flexible architecture and intuitive interface. Thomas thrived in his expanded role handling investor relations and business development. He had a natural talent for navigating the venture capital world, speaking their language and building relationships that opened doors for CloudLink. "You focus on making the product exceptional," he told me. "I'll handle the money, people." That arrangement made sense. I was never comfortable with the networking and schmoozing required for fundraising. Besides, the product needed my attention as we scaled to serve more customers with increasingly complex needs. It was at the TechCrunch Disrupt conference in New York where Thomas first introduced me to Audrey Bennett. Tall, poised, with sharp features and an MBA from Wharton, Audrey had previously worked at Goldman Sachs in their technology investment division. "Audrey's interested in joining our team," Thomas explained. "Her experience with tech IPOs could be invaluable as we grow." Something about her smile didn't reach her eyes when she shook my hand. "Thomas has told me so much about your technical contributions," she said, emphasizing the word in a way that somehow diminished it. I felt an immediate unease but dismissed it as competitive instinct. After all, Thomas was bringing in talented people, and we needed expertise beyond my technical knowledge. 2 weeks later, Audrey joined CloudLink as an investor relations consultant, a role Thomas created specifically for her. Her office was positioned right next to Thomas's, and soon they were spending hours behind closed doors in strategic planning sessions. "Don't you think it's strange how much time Thomas and the new consultant spend together?" Jamie asked me one evening as we worked late. "They're restructuring our approach to the next funding round," I said, though the question planted a seed of doubt. Meanwhile, CloudLink hit a significant breakthrough. Our predictive customer engagement module, code I'd been refining for months, was outperforming every competitor in the market. Suddenly, companies that had ignored us were calling, and our growth curve steepened dramatically. With this success came Series B funding, $15 million, that catapulted us into a new league. We moved again to a full floor in a downtown high-rise and expanded to 50 employees. Thomas hired a PR firm, and my reluctant face appeared in business magazines touting me as a technical visionary. The company culture began to shift. The intimate, all-hands team meetings became formal affairs with slide decks and catered lunches. New hires no longer met with me directly. Most were referred by Audrey from her extensive network. Thomas and Audrey began traveling together for investor meetings to New York, Boston, even London and Singapore. When I expressed interest in joining, Thomas always had a reason why I should stay. "Investors want to see the company running smoothly even when key executives are away," he explained. "Besides, the development team needs your guidance on the new security protocols." Small inconsistencies began to appear in Thomas's stories. He mentioned meetings with firms that, when I later referenced them, he claimed never happened. Expense reports showed dinners for potential investors, whose names never appeared in our contact database. Jamie, now our director of customer success, approached me after one executive meeting. "Stephanie, I need to talk to you about Thomas and Audrey." "What about them?" I asked, already feeling defensive. "I saw them at the Battery last weekend. They didn't see me, but..." They weren't discussing business. They were holding hands across the table, and the way they looked at each other. "Jamie, I appreciate your concern, but you're misinterpreting things," I interrupted. "Thomas is passionate about business discussions. You know how animated he gets." Jamie looked unconvinced but didn't press further. I buried myself deeper in product development, expanding CloudLink's capabilities while growing increasingly disconnected from the business operations. The first undeniable red flag came when I overheard Thomas and Audrey talking in his office late one evening. I had come back to grab my forgotten laptop. "She doesn't need to know about the restructuring yet," Audrey was saying. "It would only complicate things." Stephanie trusts me to handle the business side, Thomas replied. As long as we position it correctly when the time comes, she'll understand it's for the good of the company. I froze outside the door, heart pounding. What restructuring? A CEO and founder. Shouldn't I be informed about major company changes? I nearly confronted them then but instead retreated, telling myself there must be a reasonable explanation. Perhaps they were planning a surprise announcement about our expansion. That night, I lay awake beside Thomas, studying his sleeping face and wondering if I truly knew the man I had married and built a company with. For the first time, I felt like an outsider in my own creation. By our 4th year, CloudLink's valuation reached $100 million. Industry analysts were taking notice, and competitors were trying to replicate our technology. We had over 100 employees, a sleek headquarters with the requisite startup perks, and a growing reputation as the next big thing in enterprise software. My role as CEO had become increasingly ceremonial. While I still directed product development and maintained my title, Thomas had gradually taken control of strategic business decisions, citing my need to focus on technical innovation. Our investors respond better when I handle the business updates, he explained after excluding me from yet another board presentation. They get lost in the technical details when you speak. I translate your brilliance into terms they understand. It was a plausible explanation, and one that appealed to my introverted nature. I didn't enjoy the spotlight or investor meetings, preferring the challenge of solving complex technical problems. Still, the distance between my vision for the company and its actual direction was growing. Audrey's influence expanded steadily. What began as a consulting role evolved into Chief Strategy Officer, a position created without my input. She brought in a network of connections who quickly occupied key positions. Her former colleague Ryan became our CFO. Her business school friend Martin joined as Chief Marketing Officer. Her mentor Patricia secured a seat on our board of directors. My 80-hour work weeks left little time for monitoring these power shifts, or even maintaining my marriage. Thomas and I became ships passing in the night, connected by the company but increasingly disconnected as partners. Conversations that once flowed easily became transactional and brief. "I need your signature on these documents," became Thomas's most common greeting, sliding papers across our kitchen island before heading out to strategic dinners that never included me. "What exactly am I signing?" I asked one evening, pausing before adding my signature to a thick document. "Just standard amendments to our operating agreement, based on the Series C requirements," Thomas said, checking his watch. The lawyers insisted we update them to reflect our current capitalization table. I skimmed the densely worded legal text, noting provisions about executive restructuring contingencies and alternative management scenarios. But Thomas was already taking the pen from my hand. "The car's waiting, and I'm already late for dinner with SoftBank," he said, tucking the signed papers into his briefcase. "I'll have them scanned and sent to your email." Those scans never arrived, and when I asked about them later, Thomas claimed they'd been filed directly with our corporate counsel. As preparations for a potential IPO gained momentum, investment bankers began circling. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and JP Morgan sent representatives to evaluate our potential as a public company. I was trotted out for these meetings as the technical genius behind CloudLink, but increasingly found myself being talked about rather than talked to. "Stephanie's breakthrough architecture is what sets CloudLink apart," Thomas would explain while I sat silently beside him. "But don't worry about getting too deep in the technical weeds with her. Audrey and I can walk you through the business implications." The tension between Audrey and me became palpable in meetings. She would subtly interrupt my explanations, simplifying my points in ways that often missed their technical significance. When I attempted to correct these mischaracterizations, Thomas would smoothly intervene. "What Stephanie means is," he would begin before completely reframing my statement. After one particularly frustrating board meeting where my product roadmap presentation was cut short for Audrey's market positioning update, I confronted Thomas in his office. "I feel like I'm being sidelined in my own company," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "And what's going on with you and Audrey? Jamie mentioned seeing you together in situations that didn't seem professional." Thomas's expression hardened before smoothing into concern. Stephanie, you're working too hard and getting paranoid. Audrey and I work closely together because we're handling the IPO preparation. Something you've repeatedly said you want to focus less on. But, as for Jamie's implications, that's honestly beneath you. Audrey is a valued colleague. Are you suggesting I can't work with a female executive without something inappropriate happening? That's not the Stephanie I know. I left his office feeling confused and slightly ashamed. Was I being paranoid? Projecting my insecurities onto innocent business relationships? I threw myself deeper into product development, our next-generation machine learning features requiring complex problem-solving that provided welcome distraction from my personal doubts. It was during this period that I discovered the emails. Thomas had left his laptop open while taking a shower, and a notification caught my eye. A message from Audrey with the subject line, "This weekend." Something compelled me to click it. The Carmel House is booked for Friday through Sunday. I've told my team I'm visiting my mother in Chicago. Can't wait to continue our strategic planning in the hot tub. My hands shaking. I opened another message thread between them, finding months of intimate exchanges, planning their secret getaways during supposed solo business trips, and even discussing their future together. When Thomas emerged from the shower, I was sitting motionless, the evidence open on his screen. "It's not what you think," he began, but his eyes said otherwise. "Then what is it?" My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "A mistake. A stupid, meaningless physical thing. It doesn't affect the company or us." He knelt beside me, taking my hands. "Stephanie, we're months away from the IPO. Everything we've worked for is about to pay off. Don't let this derail that." "How long?" I asked. He hesitated. "It doesn't matter." "How long?" 8 months. He finally admitted. "But I'll end it. Today. Right now. We can get past this." I didn't know what to believe anymore. The man I trusted with my company, with my heart, had been systematically lying to me. But with the IPO approaching and years of work on the line, what choices did I really have? That night, I called Claire, my oldest friend from college and the only person in my life not connected to CloudLink. "He's manipulating you," she said after I explained the situation. "This isn't just about the affair. He's been systematically isolating you from company operations." "But why? We built this together. His success is tied to mine." "Is it though? Have you reviewed the company's current ownership structure recently? The voting rights? Who controls what if you go public?" I hadn't. And that realization terrified me more than the affair ever could. The final countdown to our IPO began with a flurry of activity. Investment bankers, attorneys, accountants, and consultants swarmed our offices, conducting due diligence and preparing regulatory filings. Our valuation had soared to $500 million, with projections of reaching $1 billion post-IPO, the coveted unicorn status that defined success in Silicon Valley. True to his word, Thomas appeared to end things with Audrey. He became attentive again, bringing me coffee during late work sessions and soliciting my input on IPO decisions. The dramatic shift in his behavior should have been reassuring, but instead heightened my suspicions. Meanwhile, I noticed a troubling pattern of exclusion from critical meetings. Calendar invitations for sessions with our lead underwriters would mysteriously disappear from my schedule, only for me to discover the meetings had proceeded without me. "There must have been a sync error with your calendar," Thomas would explain. "But don't worry, it was mostly technical underwriting discussion. Nothing requiring your input." Legal documents requiring my signature multiplied, each more complex than the last. When I asked our corporate counsel, Lawrence, to explain certain provisions, Thomas would interject. "Lawrence charges $800 an hour, honey. I can walk you through these later tonight. It's standard IPO language, nothing concerning." One particular document referenced changes to founder equity allocations that seemed to reduce my voting shares while maintaining my economic interest. "This just separates economic ownership from voting control," Thomas explained. "It's protection against activist investors who might try to influence product direction post-IPO. Your vision stays protected, but we have the flexibility the public markets demand." It made sense in theory, but doubt continued to gnaw at me. I began photographing documents before signing them and forwarding copies to my personal email. Small acts of self-protection that felt both necessary and somehow disloyal. The breaking point came when I found hotel receipts in Thomas's suit pocket while doing laundry. Receipts from the Four Seasons in Los Angeles from a weekend when he was supposedly at a solo strateg. Why retreat in Seattle? The dates matched an Instagram post where Audrey had tagged herself at a rooftop bar I recognized from the same hotel. That night, I contacted a private investigator recommended by Claire, a discreet professional named Diane who specialized in high-net-worth cases. I need to know what I'm dealing with, I told her, both personally and professionally. 2 weeks later, Diane delivered her findings in a private meeting at a coffee shop far from our office. The thick folder she slid across the table contained dozens of photos, Thomas and Audrey entering hotel rooms in various cities, dining intimately at restaurants, walking hand in hand on a beach in Carmel. Some photos dated back nearly 2 years, far longer than the 8 months Thomas had admitted to. More disturbing were the business findings. Documentation of Delaware LLCs created by Thomas and Audrey that now held significant CloudLink equity. Board meeting minutes I supposedly attended but had no recollection of. Amendments to our corporate bylaws that had never been properly explained to me. Based on these documents, Diane explained quietly, your husband and Ms. Bennett have been systematically restructuring the company's ownership and governance for at least 18 months. They've been particularly active since your Series C round closed. I felt physically ill. What's their endgame? I can't say with certainty, but these structures would allow for a significant shift in control immediately following your public offering. Your technical contributions remain protected intellectually, but operational control appears designed to transfer away from you. That evening, I waited in our living room until Thomas returned home. I placed the photos on the coffee table where he couldn't miss them. His face drained of color when he saw them, but quickly regained composure. You hired someone to spy on me? That's a new low, Stephanie. Don't. Just don't. My voice remained steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. 2 years. Thomas. Not 8 months. 2 years of lying to my face while you and Audrey plotted behind my back. He sat heavily on the sofa. It's complicated. Uncomplicated for me. Explain these. I dropped the corporate documents beside the photos. Explain how my voting shares have been diluted without my knowledge. Explain the mystery LLCs that now own 15% of CloudLink. For the first time, Thomas looked genuinely frightened. How did you get these? Does it matter? What matters is you've been stealing my company while sleeping with my employee. Our company. He corrected automatically. And Audrey isn't just some employee. She has the business acumen you lack. CloudLink needs both of us for the IPO to succeed. Are you in love with her? The question seemed to catch him off guard. This isn't about love, Stephanie. It's about building something sustainable. You're brilliant with product, but the public markets need different leadership. We can make this work. A clean transition that benefits everyone. By humiliating me? By going behind my back? By avoiding a messy public situation. His composure cracked. Look, the IPO is 6 weeks away. The roadshow starts next week. If you file for divorce now or make accusations, we lose everything we've built. Is that what you want? It wasn't. Despite everything, CloudLink was still my life's work, my vision made real. The thought of destroying it in a public legal battle was unbearable. What do you propose? I asked, hating how defeated I sounded. Relief washed over his face. We maintain the status quo through the IPO. You continue as Chief Technology Officer. The ownership adjustments stay in place. They're done anyway, legally binding. Afterward, we announce an amicable separation, both personal and professional. You retain your equity value, which will be worth tens of millions. Everyone wins. And Audrey? He hesitated. Transitions to CEO over a 6-month period following the IPO. The audacity was breathtaking. Yet with the IPO machinery already in motion and years of work at stake, my options felt limited. I needed time to consult with independent counsel and understand my true position. I need to think about it, I said finally. Thomas nodded, clearly believing he'd won. That's reasonable. But please, Stephanie, don't do anything rash. Too many people are counting on this IPO succeeding. The next day I met with Patricia Hayes, an attorney specializing in corporate governance who had no connection to CloudLink. After reviewing my documents, her assessment was blunt. They've been very careful. These changes were implemented incrementally, each seemingly minor on its own but creating a significant cumulative effect. While there might be breach of fiduciary duty claims, litigation would likely delay your IPO indefinitely. So I have no recourse? I didn't say that. She leaned forward. The documents tell one story, but you have another. This company was your vision, your technology. Sometimes the court of public opinion moves faster than courts of law. The question is, are you willing to use it? As the IPO date approached, I maintained a carefully crafted facade, the brilliant technical founder excited about taking her company public. I attended rehearsals for the roadshow presentations, smiling for promotional photos with Thomas and the executive team. I signed the necessary SEC filings and nodded at appropriate moments during banker meetings. Meanwhile, I meticulously documented everything, created secure backups of all company intellectual property, and quietly connected with key employees I believed would remain loyal to me. I had no concrete plan yet, but knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't simply surrender my company without a fight. The night before our IPO gala, I overheard Thomas and Audrey in his office, their voices carrying through the partially open door. "Everything changes tomorrow," Audrey said. "Are you ready?" "More than ready," Thomas replied. "She suspects something, but has no idea what's actually coming." I slipped away before they could notice me, their words echoing in my mind as I prepared for what would become the most humiliating night of my professional life. The Grand Hyatt ballroom sparkled with achievement. 500 guests in formal attire mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, celebrating CloudLink's transformation from garage startup to public company. Financial reporters circulated with photographers, capturing images of Silicon Valley's newest success story. Tomorrow morning, we would ring the opening bell at NASDAQ, and our stock would begin trading under the symbol CLNK. I wore a midnight blue gown selected by the PR team for approachable sophistication, my usually practical ponytail replaced with an elegant updo. My smile felt frozen as I moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and deflecting technical questions with practiced soundbites about revolutionary customer-centric architecture and AI-driven engagement paradigms. "You look tense," Jamie whispered, appearing at my elbow with a fresh glass of champagne. "Are you okay?" "Just IPO jitters," I lied, grateful for her familiar presence among so many investor faces I barely recognized. "Have you seen Thomas?" Huddled with Audrey and some suits from Morgan Stanley near the stage. Indeed, Thomas stood at the center of an admiring circle, his tuxedo impeccable, one hand resting casually on Audrey's bare shoulder as she laughed at something he said. They looked like a power couple from a business magazine cover. Patricia, our lead board member, clinked a knife against her glass, calling for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats for the evening's program." I found my place at the head table between Thomas's empty chair and Derek Harris, our first investor. The program began with a video chronicling CloudLink's journey, footage of our original garage office, early team meetings, product launches, and growth milestones. My chest tightened seeing those innocent early days, the genuine excitement and belief we once shared. Board members offered brief congratulatory remarks. Patricia praised our revolutionary approach to customer data management. Derek reminisced about his initial investment, joking that it was the best risk I ever took. Each speech nodded respectfully to my technical contributions while emphasizing the team effort that brought us to this milestone. Finally, Thomas took the stage to thunderous applause. My husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, though no one knew that yet, stood confidently at the podium, surveying his audience with the easy charm that had once captivated me. "What a journey it's been," he began, his voice resonating through the perfect acoustics. 10 years ago, CloudLink was nothing but an idea sketched on a napkin. Today we serve over 2,000 enterprise clients, employ 300 brilliant individuals, and have revolutionized how businesses understand their customers. He paused, looking directly at me. None of this would have been possible without the technical genius of my wife, Stephanie Mitchell. Her architectural vision created the foundation for everything CloudLink has become. Stephanie, please stand and let us acknowledge your contribution. The spotlight found me as I rose mechanically, smiling through the applause while nausea churned in my stomach. I knew what was coming, or thought I did. Stephanie's brilliance with code and systems architecture is unparalleled. Thomas continued as I sat back down. Which is why I'm so pleased to announce an important evolution for CloudLink as we enter our next chapter as a public company. He gestured toward Audrey, who gracefully walked to join him on stage. Effective immediately following tomorrow's public offering, CloudLink will implement a new executive structure designed to optimize our growth potential and shareholder value. A slide appeared on the massive screen behind them. CloudLink Leadership Evolution. My name appeared with the new title, Founder and Chief Innovation Officer. Stephanie will be focusing exclusively on what she does best, driving our technical innovation forward without the distractions of day-to-day operations, Thomas explained smoothly. And I'm thrilled to announce that Audrey Bennett, who many of you know as our Chief Strategy Officer, will be assuming the role of Chief Executive Officer. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me, gauging my reaction. I sat perfectly still, my training in concealing emotions during poker games proving unexpectedly valuable. Additionally, Thomas continued, seemingly oblivious to the tension, I'll be stepping into the role of Executive Chairman, focusing on strategic partnerships and market expansion. Audrey stepped forward to the microphone. I'm honored by the board's confidence and excited to lead CloudLink into its next growth phase. Stephanie's technical foundation gives us an unparalleled competitive advantage that we'll continue to build upon. They stood together, presenting a united front as another slide appeared. A complex organizational chart showing the new power structure. My position was visually diminished, relegated to a specialized function reporting to Audrey. Thomas gestured toward me. Stephanie, would you like to join us on stage for this momentous announcement? The spotlight found me again. Every instinct screamed to refuse, to stand and denounce this coup publicly. But as I hesitated, Thomas descended from the stage and approached, offering his hand with a camera-ready smile. Don't make this more embarrassing than it already is, he whispered as he pulled me to my feet. We can discuss the details later. Like a sleepwalker, I allowed myself to be led on stage. Thomas positioned me beside him, his arm around my waist in a show of unity that made my skin crawl. A round of applause for CloudLink's founding team and new leadership structure. Patricia announced from the side of the stage. As applause filled the ballroom, I glimpsed the document displayed on the confidence monitor facing the stage, a detailed breakdown of the restructured ownership that would take effect at tomorrow's opening bell. My voting control would be diluted to near irrelevance. Operational authority would transfer completely to Thomas and Audrey. Would you like to say a few words, Stephanie? Thomas offered, extending the microphone with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I looked out at the crowd, investors who had funded us, employees who had built with us, media who would report whatever happened next. My throat constricted, words failing me as the magnitude of the betrayal fully registered. I began, then stopped, overwhelmed by conflicting impulses to scream or collapse. Stephanie is obviously overcome with emotion on this special night, Thomas smoothly interjected. As many of you know, she's always preferred solving complex technical challenges to public speaking. Gentle, condescending laughter rippled through the audience. Please enjoy dinner and dancing, Thomas concluded. Tomorrow we make history at the opening bell. As the formal program ended and music began, I stepped off the stage on unsteady legs. Jamie appeared immediately at my side. Concern etched across her features. Stephanie, what the hell was that? Did you know about this? I couldn't answer, my composure finally cracking. I hurried toward the nearest exit, desperate for air and privacy, aware of curious eyes tracking my retreat. The women's restroom provided temporary sanctuary. I locked myself in a stall, finally allowing silent tears to fall as the carefully constructed professional identity I'd built over a decade crumbled around me. My company, my creation, my husband, all taken in one perfectly orchestrated public humiliation. A gentle knock on the stall door interrupted my breakdown. "Stephanie? It's Jamie. Let me in." I unlocked the door to find my friend holding a bottle of water and looking murderous. "Those backstabbing snakes," she hissed. "Tell me what's happening." "All of it." Between shaky breaths, I summarized the situation, the affair, the corporate maneuvering, the systematic exclusion I'd experienced. "We need to get you out of here," Jamie said decisively. "You can't be seen like this. And they're looking for you. Thomas told the PR team you were emotionally overwhelmed by the announcement, and they're spinning it as you being grateful to step back from management responsibilities. I can't just disappear from my own IPO gala." "You absolutely can. I'll tell them you felt ill and I took you home. Meanwhile, you're going to my place tonight. Not back to the house you share with that snake." She helped me fix my makeup and led me through service corridors to avoid the main ballroom. As we slipped out a side entrance, I caught a glimpse through open doors of Thomas and Audrey sharing a champagne toast in the center of an admiring crowd, their triumph complete. In Jamie's car, I finally asked the question that had been haunting me. How did I not see this coming? Jamie's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Because you trusted your husband and partner. Because you were focused on building something wonderful while they were plotting to steal it. This isn't your failure, Stephanie. It's theirs, a failure of basic human decency." As San Francisco's lights blurred past the window, I felt something shift inside me. Grief giving way to a cold, clarifying anger. I had lost this battle, blindsided by people I trusted. But somehow, someway, this would not be the end of my story. The morning after the gala, I watched from Jamie's apartment as CNBC covered CloudLink's IPO. The stock opened at $42 per share, well above the planned $35, and climbed steadily throughout the day. Business commentators praised the strategic leadership transition, with one analyst noting that moving the technical founder to innovation while bringing in seasoned executive leadership shows maturity rare in tech IPOs. Thomas and Audrey rang the opening bell together, their professional body language betraying nothing of their personal relationship. I calculated the value of my shares, now worth approximately $68 million on paper, though subject to lockup restrictions preventing immediate sales. A fortune by most standards, but a fraction of what the company was truly worth and, more importantly, devoid of the control I had earned as founder. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from concerned colleagues, friends, and even reporters seeking comment on the leadership evolution. I responded to none of them. Instead, I called Patricia Hayes, my independent attorney. "I've been watching," she said before I could speak. "Are you ready to fight back? What options do I have? The IPO is done. Come to my office. Bring any evidence you've gathered. It's time to assess your position." When I arrived at Patricia's downtown office, I found not just her but a team she had assembled. Karen Chan, a forensic accountant, Michael Reeves, a securities litigation specialist, and Diane, the private investigator I had previously hired. "First, let's be clear about what happened," Patricia began after introductions. "Based on the documents you provided and our preliminary analysis, Thomas and Audrey orchestrated a complex but systematic dilution of your control through multiple transactions dating back approximately 18 months. Karen, the accountant, pointed to a timeline displayed on the conference room screen. It began with the Series C amendments that created two classes of shares, voting and non-voting. Your shares were gradually converted to non-voting through what were presented as routine documentation updates. Additionally, Michael added, they formed several Delaware LLCs that now collectively own significant portions of CloudLink. These entities appear on paper to be owned by various individuals, but our investigation suggests they're controlled by Thomas and Audrey. What about the board? I asked. Didn't they have oversight responsibility? The board members Thomas recruited, Patricia explained, all have connections to Audrey, her former professor, her mentor from Goldman Sachs, even her second cousin once removed. They were carefully selected to support this transition. The magnitude of the betrayal was staggering. Not just a personal affair but a meticulously planned corporate theft executed over months. What can we do? I asked. We have several avenues, Michael said. We can file breach of fiduciary duty claims against Thomas, Audrey, and potentially board members who failed in their oversight duties. We can petition for emergency injunctive relief regarding the leadership changes. We can also flag potential securities violations to the SEC regarding disclosures made during the IPO process. What would that accomplish? Potentially significant disruption to CloudLink's operations, negative publicity, and stock price volatility, Patricia answered honestly. Possibly a reversal of some governance changes, though that's far from guaranteed, and a lengthy, expensive legal battle that would consume years of your life. I considered this sobering assessment. Is there another approach? Possibly, Patricia said. Sometimes leverage comes from unexpected places. Over the next week, I established a new routine. Each morning, I'd wake in the small apartment I'd rented, watch CNBC's coverage of CloudLink's stock performance, and then meet with Patricia's team to develop our strategy. I ignored Thomas's increasingly threatening legal letters demanding I return to work and fulfill my contractual obligations as Chief Innovation Officer. While Patricia's team continued their investigation, I reconnected with Brian Sullivan, one of CloudLink's original engineers who had left 6 months earlier after disagreements with Audrey. Our coffee meeting at a discreet cafe in Oakland proved illuminating. "I've been waiting for your call," Brian said after we exchanged greetings. "I wondered how long it would take you to realize what was happening." "You knew." Brian looked uncomfortable. "I suspected. Thomas and Audrey started making strange technical decisions last year, rushing releases, changing architectural elements without proper testing, overriding your standards when you were traveling. Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried in my way. Remember when I came to you about the authentication service rewrite? You said Thomas had approved it and we should proceed." I did remember, and realized now how effectively Thomas had played us against each other, always positioning himself as having the other's approval. "There's something else you should know," Brian continued, lowering his voice. "They've made fundamental changes to your core synchronization algorithm, the one that makes CloudLink actually work for distributed datasets. The changes make the system look faster in demos, but they've introduced critical race conditions that will eventually corrupt customer data." My blood ran cold. "Are you certain?" "Absolutely. I documented everything before I left. I can prove they knowingly compromised system integrity for short-term performance metrics that would look good to Wall Street analysts." This revelation shifted everything. Technical malfeasance at this level wouldn't just constitute securities fraud. It would eventually destroy the company when customer data began corrupting at scale. Armed with Brian's information, I expanded our investigation, discreetly contacting other former employees who had left under similar circumstances. A pattern emerged. Thomas and Audrey had systematically pushed out anyone loyal to me or my technical vision, while implementing dangerous shortcuts to boost short-term performance metrics. Meanwhile, CloudLink's stock continued climbing, reaching $68 per share as analysts praised the company's mature leadership transition and robust growth metrics. Thomas and Audrey were featured in a glowing Wall Street Journal profile titled, "CloudLink's Power Couple: Redefining Technical Leadership for the Public Markets." 3 weeks after the IPO, my legal team made a breakthrough. Karen discovered irregularities in how Thomas had documented certain stock transfers, technical violations of SEC regulations that could potentially invalidate portions of the ownership restructuring. Additionally, Diane uncovered evidence that Thomas had similarly manipulated his first wife out of a previous business venture before meeting me, establishing a pattern of behavior that strengthened our case. Most critically, Brian and other former engineers provided documentation proving that Thomas and Audrey had knowingly approved technical changes that undermined CloudLink's core functionality, changes never disclosed to investors during the IPO process. "We have enough to approach them with a settlement proposal," Patricia advised during our strategy meeting. "Not from a position of complete strength, but enough leverage to negotiate something better than your current situation." "I don't want money," I said firmly. "I want my company back." "That may not be fully achievable," Michael cautioned, "but we can certainly aim for a significant restoration of your authority and removal of those who betrayed you." With our strategy finalized, Patricia arranged a meeting with Thomas's attorneys at Neutral Territory, a conference room in the Four Seasons. I insisted on attending despite my legal team's concerns about maintaining emotional distance. Stephanie, Thomas acknowledged coldly when I entered, flanked by Patricia and Michael. His 3 attorneys sat beside him, but Audrey was notably absent. Where's your partner in crime? I asked. Audrey is running the company you abandoned, he replied. We've prepared a summary of our findings regarding certain irregularities at CloudLink. Before we proceed with formal legal action, we wanted to offer a private resolution opportunity. Thomas's lead attorney, a stern woman named Barbara, opened the binder and began reviewing its contents. Her expression remained neutral, but I noticed her posture stiffen as she progressed through the pages. These are serious allegations, she finally said. We'll need time to review and respond. Of course, Patricia replied smoothly. However, we should note that the SEC has expressed preliminary interest in several aspects of our findings, particularly those related to undisclosed technical issues affecting customer data integrity. Thomas's face drained of color. What are you talking about? I leaned forward. The changes you and Audrey made to the synchronization algorithms, the ones that make the system appear faster, but introduce critical data corruption issues. The ones you hide with performance metrics that don't actually measure data integrity. That's absurd. Your technical team has been documenting everything, I interrupted. Former employees have provided extensive evidence. Current employees are beginning to notice problems they can't explain. It's only a matter of time before customers experience catastrophic data loss. For the first time since I'd known him, Thomas looked genuinely frightened. He whispered something to Barbara, who called for a brief recess. When they returned 30 minutes later, Thomas's demeanor had completely changed. What do you want? He asked simply. Patricia outlined our demands. My reinstatement as CEO, Thomas's complete separation from the company, a restructuring of the board to remove Audrey's connections, and restoration of my voting rights through unwinding of the questionable equity transfers. Impossible, Barbara responded immediately. The public markets would react catastrophically to such dramatic changes so soon after the IPO. More catastrophically than to widespread customer data corruption and an SEC investigation into fraud? Michael countered. What followed was 6 hours of intense negotiation, during which I learned that Thomas and Audrey's relationship had already begun fracturing under the pressure of running a public company. She had started distancing herself from decisions Thomas had made, positioning herself as a potential cooperating witness should investigations begin. By evening, we reached a preliminary agreement. I would return as CTO with expanded authority. 3 board members would resign, to be replaced by independent directors. Thomas would transition to an advisory role before departing completely within 6 months, and a significant portion of the disputed equity would be reallocated. The changes would be announced as refinements to our initial public company structure, based on market feedback and technical priorities. As the lawyers drafted the framework agreement, Thomas requested a private word with me. Against my better judgment, I agreed to 5 minutes in an adjoining room. You've won, he said once we were alone. Are you satisfied? This isn't about winning, Thomas. It's about protecting what I built, what we were supposed to be building together. He laughed humorlessly. You still don't get it, do you? The company you envisioned, the pure, technically perfect solution, was never going to succeed at scale. The compromises we made were necessary. Necessary for what? Stock options? Your affair with Audrey. Necessary for survival, he snapped. The market doesn't care about perfect code or elegant architecture. Cares about growth metrics, analyst ratings, and quarterly results. I did what was needed to make CloudLink viable. By corrupting its foundation? By betraying its creator? He looked away. I never intended for things to go this far. With Audrey, it started a strategic partnership, then became something more. Save it for your therapist, I said, turning to leave. I'm not interested in your rationalizations. Stephanie. He called as my hand touched the doorknob. For what it's worth, I really did love you once. I paused, suddenly feeling nothing but pity for this man who had nearly destroyed everything important to me. The tragedy, Thomas, is that I believe you. But you loved yourself more. I returned to the conference room where our agreement awaited signature. The first step in reclaiming my company and rebuilding what had been so nearly lost. 6 months after the IPO Gala, I sat alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment in the Mission District, surrounded by moving boxes and takeout containers. The wall-mounted TV displayed CNBC's coverage of CloudLink's first earnings report as a public company, numbers that had disappointed Wall Street expectations, sending the stock tumbling from its post-IPO high of $82 to just $31. The settlement agreement had given me back significant control, but came too late to prevent the technical problems Brian had warned about. Major customers were reporting synchronization issues, and our support team was overwhelmed with escalations. Meanwhile, Thomas had accelerated his advisory transition and departed the company entirely, his relationship with Audrey having publicly disintegrated under scrutiny. I was scheduled to return to CloudLink headquarters the following Monday after a 3-month absence, tasked with stabilizing the platform while Audrey struggled to maintain investor confidence. The irony wasn't lost on me. Being called back to save the company that had been taken from me. My phone rang. Brian Sullivan, who had agreed to rejoin CloudLink as part of my conditions for returning. "Have you seen the numbers?" he asked without preamble. "I'm watching now. Not pretty. It's worse than they're reporting. I just got access to the production monitoring systems. The data corruption issues have reached critical mass. 3 major customers are threatening to sue." I closed my eyes, feeling oddly calm despite the catastrophe. How long to implement the fix we discussed? With a focused team working round the clock? Maybe 2 weeks. But Audrey won't authorize the maintenance window we need. She's still claiming these are isolated incidents. She won't be able to deny it much longer, I said, watching as the stock dropped another 3% during our conversation. The next morning, I received an unexpected visit from Kyle Richardson, CloudLink's lead investor who had initially backed Thomas and Audrey's leadership transition, but had grown increasingly concerned as technical problems mounted. "This isn't working, Stephanie," he said bluntly as we sat at my small kitchen table. "Audrey's in denial, the technical issues are accelerating, and we're hemorrhaging customer trust." "I'm scheduled to return on Monday." "That's too late," he interrupted. "The board is holding an emergency session this afternoon. We need you there." The boardroom felt strangely foreign when I entered that afternoon. The same physical space where I'd presented countless times before, now populated by anxious faces I barely recognized. Audrey sat at the head of the table, her composed facade cracking around the edges as she acknowledged my arrival with a tight nod. Kyle called the meeting to order without ceremony. "We have one agenda item today: CloudLink's technical stability and leadership. Stephanie, please update us on your assessment." All eyes turned to me. For a moment I considered softening the blow, taking the diplomatic approach. But that moment passed quickly. "CloudLink is facing an existential technical crisis," I stated flatly. "The synchronization algorithm changes implemented before the IPO created time bombs in our customers' data. These aren't isolated incidents, they're systematic failures that will eventually affect every customer, using our distributed architecture. And they were knowingly implemented to boost performance metrics for the IPO." The silence that followed was deafening. "That's an outrageous accusation," Audrey finally responded, her voice tight. "Our technical team." "Your technical team has been documenting these problems for months," I interrupted, sliding copies of internal tickets and emails across the table. "They've been ignored or told to implement band-aid solutions that address symptoms rather than causes." Kyle reviewed the documentation, his expression darkening. "Is this true, Audrey?" "These are complex technical issues that Stephanie is dramatically oversimplifying," she deflected. "We have plans in place. Plans that don't address the root cause," I cut in. "Plans that will fail catastrophically when the next major customer hits the corruption threshold." "What do you propose?" asked Patricia, one of the new independent board members appointed after the settlement. "A complete rollback to the last stable version of the synchronization engine. 2 weeks of round-the-clock migration work. Transparent communication with customers about what happened and how we're fixing it. That would crush our stock price," Audrey protested. "We can implement fixes gradually. The stock price won't matter if the product doesn't work," Kyle interrupted. "Stephanie, if we authorize this approach, could you lead it personally?" "Yes, but only with complete authority over technical decisions and operations until stability is restored." The vote took less than 10 minutes. Audrey was placed on administrative leave, while I was appointed interim CEO with emergency powers to address the technical crisis. As the boardroom emptied, she remained seated, staring blankly at the documentation I'd provided. "For what it's worth, I didn't want it to happen this way," I told her. She looked up, her composure finally breaking. "He used me too, you know. Thomas. He had this plan from the beginning. Get me to help him take control from you, then gradually push me out once he had what he wanted. Yet you went along with it. I believed in him," she said simply. "Just like you did once." The next 2 weeks were the most intense of my professional life. I assembled a crisis team of our best engineers, including Brian and several others who had left during Thomas and Audrey's tenure, but agreed to return as contractors. We worked around the clock, setting up cots in conference rooms and subsisting on delivered meals and too much coffee. Jamie coordinated customer communication, personally calling our largest clients to explain the situation and our resolution plan. Surprisingly, most responded with relief that someone was finally acknowledging the problems they'd been experiencing for months. 17 days after taking control at 3:47 a.m., our monitoring systems confirmed what exhausted engineers had been waiting for. All customer instances had successfully migrated to the restored synchronization engine, and data integrity checks were passing across the platform. "It works," Brian confirmed, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "All test scenarios passing. Customer data reconciled." A cheer went up across the tired room, engineers hugging and high-fiving despite their exhaustion. For the first time since the IPO disaster, I felt the pure joy of solving a complex technical problem, the feeling that had driven me to start CloudLink in the first place. The stock bottomed at $19 during our transparency phase, as analysts questioned whether CloudLink could recover from such fundamental technical issues. But as customers reported improved stability, and our team released innovative features that had been sidelined during Thomas and Audrey's tenure, confidence gradually returned. 3 months after the emergency board meeting, CloudLink held its first post-crisis investor day. As interim CEO, I presented our technical recovery strategy and future roadmap to a skeptical but attentive audience of analysts and major shareholders. CloudLink was founded on a simple principle, I concluded after detailed technical and business presentations, that customer relationships are too important to trust to fragile, disconnected systems. We temporarily lost sight of that principle in pursuit of short-term metrics, but have returned to our foundational values: technical excellence, customer trust, and honest innovation. The stock closed up 12% that day. 1 week later, Kyle requested a private meeting at his Menlo Park office. The board has been discussing CloudLink's permanent leadership structure. He began. Your interim appointment has clearly stabilized the company, but we need to determine the best path forward. I nodded, expecting to be transitioned back to a purely technical role now that the crisis had passed. We'd like to offer you the permanent CEO position, he continued, surprising me, with a restructured executive team of your choosing, and a refreshed board that better represents CloudLink's values. What about Audrey? She's negotiated an exit package and will be leaving entirely. As for Thomas, we've initiated legal proceedings regarding his actions prior to and during the IPO. The SEC has opened a formal investigation based on evidence we've provided. I considered the offer carefully. Running CloudLink as CEO had never been my ambition. I'd always seen myself as the technical visionary, rather than the business leader. But the past months had taught me that separating those roles created dangerous vulnerabilities. I'll accept on one condition, I said finally, that we revise CloudLink's corporate charter to embed technical integrity and customer trust as legally binding priorities, even when they conflict with short-term financial metrics. Kyle smiled. I was hoping you'd say something like that. The board has already drafted those very changes. 1 year after the IPO Gala where Thomas had tried to steal my company, I stood on a different stage, our new headquarters all-hands area, addressing CloudLink's now 400 employees. The stock had recovered to $47, customer retention had reached all-time highs, and we've been named to Forbes' Most Innovative Companies list. Today marks not just CloudLink's recovery, but its rebirth, I told the assembled team. We've learned the hard way that technical excellence and integrity aren't just nice-to-have values. They're essential to our survival and success. I glanced at the front row where Brian, Jamie, and other key team members who had stood by me through the darkest days sat smiling. 1 year ago, I watched someone try to take this company from me because they believed business was about control, manipulation, and short-term gains. They were wrong. Real business success, sustainable success, comes from building something genuine that solves real problems for customers who trust you. As applause filled the room, I felt a deep sense of closure. The journey had nearly broken me, but in rebuilding CloudLink, I had also rebuilt myself, stronger, wiser, and with a clearer vision than ever before. Later that evening, as I packed up my office, I found an old photograph from our garage days, Thomas and me, grinning with exhausted optimism, a whiteboard filled with CloudLink's original architecture behind us. I didn't feel anger looking at it anymore, just a quiet appreciation for the lesson learned. Success isn't just about building a great company, it's about becoming the kind of person who can protect what they've built. I placed the photo in my desk drawer rather than throwing it away, a reminder of both what was lost and what was gained on this unexpected journey. Have you ever had to fight to reclaim something that was rightfully yours? Whether it was a company, a relationship, or simply your self-respect. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if my journey resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of resilience and transformation, and share this with someone who might need to hear that setbacks, even devastating ones, don't have to be the end of your story. Thank you for being part of my healing journey, and remember, your greatest comeback often follows your most painful betrayal.